Hey guys, 10 years ago, I got to fly to Europe and review a car that I absolutely fell in love with. But then when I came to America and I had a chance to review it, I actually hated it, but now I've bought it. So I got a lot of explaining to do, isn't that right, Tommy?
Yeah, I'm not really sure why you bought this car, Dad, because you did hate it with a burning passion when you drove the US version.
Well, let me introduce you to the car that we just bought. It is the 2013 Volkswagen Golf R Mark 6. And let me explain what happened. So Volkswagen flew me to Europe and I had a chance to review this car and I absolutely fell in love with it. I love the driving dynamics, I love the transmission, I love the seats, I love the lights, except there was a catch. Isn't that true, Tommy? Because when the car came to America, Volkswagen changed a lot of things around. So, well, why don't you tell them the differences between the European Golf R, at least the Mark 6, and this one?
Yeah, we got kind of sloppy seconds with the Golf R in this generation. So this is the Mark 6 Volkswagen Golf R. It was here in the States for 2012 and 2013. And let's start with some of the big obvious changes. So in Europe, they got more power. Here in the US, we got 256 horsepower and 243 pound-feet of torque. Their version had something like 270 horsepower, so a lot more power. And then when you talk about like suspension and chassis, they had these optional cool and very effective adjustable dampers with 3 different modes. We never got that here in the US. They also got different wheel options, so we only got the 18-inch wheels. They got 18 and 19-inch wheels. Then we come to the Golf R's party trick, which was the DSG. That never came to the US. The dual clutch was never available in the US. We only got the 6-speed manual, which is a good transmission, a lot of fun to drive. But once again, they got the quicker version of this car. They also got a bigger screen, so they had a larger screen size available with optional backup camera and parking sensors. That never came to the US. They also got better seats, optional sport seats in multiple colors. We only got the standard seats in black. Oh, we're not done yet.
No,
and then we get to the rear. They actually had different taillights with LEDs. We had the standard halogens. So they did cite cost for a lot of the reasons that we got kind of the detuned, decontented, fun to drive version, but the end result was that the European Mark 6R was a better performer than the US version.
Well, let me show you. Right here we have the sticker to this one, which is the one that we just purchased. And this one cost, right there, $36,885. It only had one option package, Tommy, and that was a better, well, it's right there. There was a 4-door sunroof navigation feature, so you got a better radio, you got nav, and you got a sunroof. That was the only option, coming in a total of almost $37,000. Now, the European one that I test drove, if I remember right, that was like a 50,000 euro car, so it was much more premium than this car. But you know what? I kind of felt like I got bait and switched because I drove this really cool, fun, fast car. And by the way, if you want to see that video and see what it looked like 10 years ago, you can click on the link below. I'll just pin the comment, the very first comment, and a link to that video. But you may be wondering, so why did I go out and buy a Mark 6 Golf R, Tommy?
Yeah, I'm still wondering that, because if you read the reviews of this car from back in 2012, they kind of got panned actually for a lot of the marketing of this vehicle. So Volkswagen really tried to target this toward WRX, STI, and the Evo at the time, which were a lot more powerful. They were arguably a little bit better to drive in a lot of ways, and the Golf R just kind of was, I don't know, not really up there with those tuner icons.
Well, let me explain, okay? I'll make this argument so that you understand. To me, the Golf R has always been the Porsche 911 for the everyman, right? It's affordable. It has basically all of the ingredients to make for a really fun and fast car. So we're talking all-wheel drive, we're talking a turbo, we're talking, you know, bigger brakes, we're talking a really good manual transmission, all the stuff that you can get in a Porsche turbo for a lot less money. And so that's always been the appeal to me for the Golf R. So when I had a chance to think about the fact that, well, Porsche turbos are now $250,000, and this is my version of the Porsche Turbo, I kind of rethought about why I disliked it and thought, you know what, we paid $19,000 for this car, you can tune them, there's just so much fun and functionality that I thought, you know what, let's buy it and let's see if I was wrong all those years ago. So shall we take it for a ride and talk about it?
Yeah, I think that sounds good, Dad. No, I will say that the design has aged quite well, so there's now a brand new version of the Golf R in the Mark 8 generation. This one was, I think, the first one that came to the US that wasn't marketed as an R32. Unlike the 5th generation version of the all-wheel drive Volkswagen Golf 2, here in the US, this one, and abroad I should say, was turbocharged. So the 5th generation, the R32, had a a 6-cylinder, the VR6. This one had a little 2-liter turbo.
Want me to show it to you?
Yeah.
It's basically a detuned version of an Audi TT RS from back in the day.
Well, I think it was TTS then, wasn't it?
TTS. I don't think it was the RS back then yet.
But it's still a very capable power plant. So TSI 2-liter turbocharged engine. I think this was the E888 version of this engine. Like I said, here in the US, 256 horsepower, 243. So it was a lot more powerful than the GTI back in the day. I think, for example, like the torque and the horsepower were some like 40, 50 less on the GTI compared to the R. And then these, of course, did have all-wheel drive, although by modern standards, a little bit primitive. This was a kind of a couple generation old Halidex all-wheel drive.
Yeah, basically it's a front-wheel drive car, and when you need it, in other words, when there's slippage, it sends power to the rear. So it's not like a WRX or STI at the time, or even Evo that was all-wheel drive all the time.
Oh, right.
So let's talk about what I love about this car, Tommy, and that is just the analog nature. We have gone now to such, well, let's call it electronic wizardry for the sake of electronics, where everything is touchscreen, right? This actually has crazy buttons that I love. So you've got a volume button, you've got a tuning button, you've got buttons for your heated seats, and actually it does have a lot of interesting features for that base price of just $36,000. So
it also has knobs. Like, look at that. So not only are they buttons, but they also spin like knobs.
So for instance, when I was driving it last night, I figured out that it has headlights that steer. How cool is that?
Yeah, that's pretty good. Yeah, that's pretty good. Now, the little screen works quite well. This basically is your little preset screen, and then you can spin the little selector to go through presets. You also have station list, which is pretty cool. Luckily, it is new enough where you also have phone connectivity and navigation as well. Plus, it's well equipped with dual zone automatic climate control, heated seats, lots of nice stuff.
Yeah, and Bluetooth.
Look at all these missing buttons down here.
I know, that's probably what the Europeans, what didn't we get? This is kind of crazy. You know, it's got this old, I think it's a 32 connector before the USB port, so that's not grand. But if it has Bluetooth, I don't really care. You need a little adapter to actually plug your phone into it. But this is a really nice 6-speed manual.
Are you sad we didn't get the DSG?
No, I'm not sad. I love shifting my own cars. I think it's so much more fun.
Funny enough, isn't it funky that, like, for the American market, they gave us manual only? For a culture that loves our automatics, they actually did a bunch of surveys, though, and they found that R32 owners and GTI owners in the U.S. primarily favored, and still do, by the way, favor the manual transmission, which is why, and I think I'm right about this, Dad, the new GTI, the brand new one, the only way you can get a manual is in the U.S., isn't that right? I think that's correct.
I think that might be correct. But
they talked to us about that on the launch of the car.
Yeah. So we just came off actually driving the new GTI and the new Golf R. And the one thing that I had a really hard time with was the infotainment. So, you know, I solved that problem. Making it cheaper and I think a little bit more functional by getting the older version of this car. So, of course, this was the top dog Golf at the time, even though it says, did you know it says, nowhere does it say Golf on this car, Tommy? Nowhere.
That is funky.
Yeah. And the cool thing about this engine was that, you know, it had a little bit of a turbo lag, but when it took off, 256 horsepower, like 240, I think 3 pound-foot of torque, and it scoots, dude.
Yeah, I'm actually pretty impressed. Now, it doesn't, throw you back like a Tesla. It doesn't really even punch you in the back like an STI of this era, but it does have a nice, consistent power band that gives you a nice push from pretty much any RPM.
Yeah, and I want to say, let me show you this. Can you show them the speedometer? Look at the top speed limit on that. Can you see that?
200.
You think it'll do 200 miles an hour?
I think in the US they were electronically limited to 130, and then I think abroad, if you got so here in the US you could only get all season tires, I believe, and then abroad you could get it up to 155 if you got the performance tires.
But it says 200 or 300 kilometers.
Yeah, 200 miles an hour is pretty far from 130 miles an hour.
You know what? I think you could tune this thing and actually probably get it up above 155 miles an hour, which was, I'm just going to make a U-turn here, which was, of course, the top speed in Europe. The one nice thing about this car is it's just dead solid, right? I could almost see driving this in Europe like I did, where you're on the Autobahn. And let's face it, it's a little anonymous. I mean, it looks just like a regular Golf. and then you're on the Autobahn, and next thing you know, this car comes whizzing by you at 155 miles an hour with its lights on. That is like dead solid and dead comfortable at that speed, and that's what this Golf R is. That's the beauty of this car. You could put you, your family, your dog, and have the hot hatch of your dreams. And I kind of feel like all of those cars have gone away now. Right now we're stuck with mostly SUVs or tall station wagons. There goes an Outback, and the beauty of the Golf has always been that it's like the Swiss Army knife. It does it all. And of course, this is the top of the line, the biggest, the most functional Swiss Army knife of the Golf range. And that's what's so cool about it.
I think it's held up pretty well. This one's 82,000 miles and surprisingly well screwed together. So I'm actually very surprised. I know that Volkswagens of a certain age have a reputation of smelling like crayons and sounding like a tin can full of rocks, but this one doesn't squeak or rattle, and everything seems to work just fine on it.
Now, this was the last generation that was still built in Wolfsburg. After the Mark VI, they moved production, I believe, of the Golf to Mexico. And I'm not saying they're worse or better, but I kind of like the fact that Germans built my German car.
Is that true?
Yeah, I think that's true.
I don't know. I think the Golf R might still be made in Germany.
I don't know. I don't think so. I think it's actually made in Mexico. Anyway, if you guys want to Google that, let us know in the comments below. I remember hearing that at a press conference, but I could be wrong. I know the Golf Mark VI was the last one that was definitely made. The last GTI was the Mark VI that was made in Germany, and then it went to Mexico.
And the Mark VII? All right, I don't know. I have to look into that. That's an interesting question.
The other nice thing about this is, and when I was a younger man 10 years ago, you wanted a car that was a little bit more raw, right? That was a little bit like boyhood racer. And now that I'm 10 years older, I actually appreciate that these seats are comfortable. Let's compare and contrast it to like the Civic Type R, right? Those seats to me are a medieval torture device. Here, with my big American, I fit comfortably. It's easy to get in and out of. If I move my seat back quite a ways, which I do because I'm pretty tall, there's still room in the back for passengers. And this gear shift is just really easy to use. I would not hesitate having somebody, learn driving stick shift because it's a pussycat around town. It's only when you get into the turbo that you actually start to see the power. And back in the day, this was the more refined car, and it still is. Most of the reviews that I watched, even I think including mine, the thing that people complained about the most was that it was almost too refined, right? That it wasn't raw and didn't have that kind of visceral driving dynamic that you would get out of an STI or an Evo of the time. But as I get older, I kind of appreciate that. You know what else I appreciate? A handbrake, dude.
Yeah, I do have to say, especially the interior, it is a little boring. There's an R badge here, but like...
It says Golf R over there.
Yeah, there's an R badge there, but like even the GTI had those cool plaid seats, right, that were funky, and it had the golf ball style shifter. This they didn't do enough to make this feel special.
There's an R there.
Yeah, the steering wheel's good. They did a good job with the
steering
steering
wheel. If you open the door, there's an R on the door sill.
Once again, if you're counting R's to make a point that it's interesting, I don't think they did a good enough job making it interesting.
Not enough R's or too many R's?
I don't know, like the exhaust should pop more and it needs to have more crazy accents inside.
That's the thing about this car, right? They're extremely tunable. I do love the center mounted dual exhaust. I think that's one of the coolest parts of the car. And I was watching a video that our friends did from Utah where they actually got together with the tuning company and they tuned this car to 450 horsepower. So it's not hard to get a lot more power out of it. But the question is, what should we do with it, Tommy? Do you, and when I say you, I mean the audience out there, do you want us to tune it? It's been done. Do you want us to auto cross it? Do you want us to put it up against Alex's new tuned GTI, which is also Mark VI? If you watched a video that we recently put up, you'll notice that we did a tune versus stock GTI, so we have those to compare as well. So there's a lot of possibilities. What do you think, Tommy?
Well, let's see what the fine folks watching this want to see, and then what everyone's wondering, how much did you pay for an 82,000 mile Golf R?
We paid $19,000. It's got issues, so right there. Obviously, somebody ran it into something, as well as on the other side. But in general, the wheels are curbed, the tires are completely shot.
Well, it was a good one to buy because it was an older gentleman who bought it brand new. So it's a one-owner car driven by someone in I mean, that's more mature than someone like me.
Dude, I think the guy was my age.
Well,
Are
there
you
you
saying
have
I'm an
it.
older gentleman? But yeah, I mean, it's not a, it's an 82,000 mile clean, well taken care of example. I always love cars like that. Probably needs, if we really wanted to bring it back, we need to do a new front bumper.
Let's be honest, Ed. I think in any other non-COVID market, it'd probably be 15.
Oh, I think this car a year and a half ago was 15,000.
Yeah, but now with the craziness that is our pandemic used car market, it's 19. So
Well, anyway, if you want to see my original review from Germany, I remember I spent the whole night actually editing that review. Click on the first comment. As always, this is Roman.
yep, and Tommy, we'll see you on another episode.
See you guys next time. Ciao.